Okay, we're live. Welcome to another episode of the Tom and John Show. Again, Tom is off gallivanting around the country and not joining us today. It's slowly becoming the John Show without Tom, but I know he wishes that he could be here, but I know he had things going on, and I didn't want to try and reschedule. So Dave, welcome. We have Dave Downing from Golf Maintenance Solutions. And Dave, I'm going to probably bastardize your your bio, and I'm going to try and do that, and then I'll let you expand on it a little bit. So you're from Pennsylvania. You grew up in Reedsville, did the 2-year program here at Penn State. I won't date you in terms of when you graduated, but it's after Matt Schaefer. So like I'll say that I'll date him, and then not you. You spent some time as an assistant, working your way up through superintendent in the Philadelphia area, and then you kind of traveled around the country some. You were at TPC in Connecticut, which is now, is it River Highlands now? Is that what?
River Highlands, yep.
And then you were in Las Vegas, and then ultimately built a lot of golf courses in Myrtle Beach. Did some work with some management companies, and then ultimately ended up at your current job, Golf Maintenance Solutions. So that's a really brief overview bio, but why don't you kind of expand on that a little bit and tell us a little bit about your career?
Well, it's been doing it for about 40 years now overall. So I've been fortunate to do a lot of cool things. So like you said, I worked in the Philadelphia area as an assistant, moved to Williamsport Country Club as a superintendent. So that was a great first job, learned a lot there. Traveled to Kennett Square, TPC of Connecticut, Las Vegas Country Club. And as I was at Las Vegas Country Club, I achieved kind of some personal goals at a really young age of managing PGA Tour events or doing championships. And so I was looking for something new, and I was having to talk to my wife one day, and I said, it'd be great if I could either do construction or multi-course. That would kind of take me to what I thought would be a kind of the next level or a great opportunity. And I heard about a job in Myrtle Beach where they were originally going to build 100 holes of golf. So I learned about that through Western Golf Properties. So I was hired to be, actually served as the owner's representative when I got there. And 9 holes were already under construction, irrigation going in the ground. So over the next 4 years, built 4 golf courses, one at a time. I ended up at only 72 holes. We gave Reese Jones the last 180 or 250 acres, and the last golf course was 160 acres of mowed, maintained, irrigated turf, which was kind of unusual for Myrtle Beach at the time. So, bent grass greens, Penn Links at the time. I was there for 8 years, and I like to keep busy and kind of challenged. And you would think at 72 holes that you couldn't get bored, but we kind of had it dialed in and had an opportunity to go build 4 golf courses at one time. So Barefoot Resort was a big challenge. Worked with Tom Fazio, Greg Norman, Pete Dye, and Davis Love III, building 4 golf courses all at once.
How is that? Because, I mean, it sounds like with 4 golf courses and then you have 4 different architects, it seems like each course would be very different. So, and management and input and thought process might be different. So how was that?
Very interesting. In fact, when I first met with the owners, I said, your biggest issue is they may never finish because they may all start looking at each other's properties and, Davis is doing this, so I better do this, or, Pete's doing that, so maybe I better change because his is looking pretty good and I need to get mine better. So some of that competition is what the owners wanted too. They wanted those guys to compete against each other. At the end of the day, what was really cool about it was they really didn't go look at each other's. I would say Davis would look and Mark Love would look a little more because they were more the novices at the time, but they really stuck to their plan and did what they wanted to do. So we ended up with really 4 great golf courses, all bent grass, greens, A1, bunch of different grasses. Yeah, so they all were different, but because we were there at the beginning, we were able to control, especially greens construction, shade issues. I mean, we really worked with the architects and the contractors, plus we were the general contractor. So we kind of drove the boat the whole time. So it was really fun. We got to September. So I went there in the fall of '98. In September of '99, we were.
That's a real good time for golf construction.
Well, if we could have, at the end of the day, we were almost to the point of having everything grassed and grown in under 12 months. from the time they started clearing to growing in, but we got hit with a little storm called Hurricane Floyd, 24 inches of rain in 36 hours. The day before it hit, we laid 10 truckloads of sod because I'd been through 4 or 5 hurricanes. And we usually get some rain, some wind. The wind we weren't as concerned about, but we had these truckloads of sod sitting there, and I said, we're going to put them on the ground because if we only get 6 or 8 inches of rain, we may save us a bunch of erosion. If we lose power, it's just going to rot on the pallets. So let's just get them on the ground. And the next day, 2 days later, when I got back on property, none of that sod was where we put it, despite the fact that we'd even staked it in. So we had a creek on the Norman course that was about 20 to 50 feet wide in areas. It was over 150 feet wide. A row of irrigation had ended up in the intercoastal waterway. We had cart paths undermined and buckling. So at the end of the day, we didn't finish until New Year's Eve day, putting the last bit of sod on the ground. And we opened all the golf courses the first week of March, the following spring. All of them opened on the same day. Now, we were still pouring concrete. We had to move people around. We were bringing people over on boats from Barefoot Landing, vanning them in. I spent the first 3 days on a bunker machine, leveling out the tire ruts in the parking lot and building ways for golf carts to get around where we didn't have concrete yet. So, but we opened them all on the same day, which at the end of the day was the goal.
Did you submit your letter of resignation the day after that?
Heck no, man. I was like, let's go do this again.
Punishment. So,
like I said, I don't like to be bored, so we had plenty of activity to keep us going all the time there.
Yeah, that's pretty good. But you built those courses all 4 simultaneously, and then you moved on to some management companies, and ultimately ended up in Golf Maintenance Solutions. So I don't really know a lot. I know you're a consulting group, but tell me about Golf Maintenance Solutions. What do you do? What is what's the concept of the company?
Okay. The company was started by 2 guys, Dean Wachowski, a Michigan State grad, and Bill Nareth from Iowa. They were both regional agronomists with American Golf back in the day. And through some of the iterations, they formed this company 12 years ago. And kind of their niche became most of the smaller and mid-sized management companies are old American Golf executives. So as they started their companies, they couldn't afford a full-time director of agronomy or didn't feel the need. So Dean and Bill filled a real niche for them, helping them with agronomic support, budgeting, staffing, capital projects, all that kind of stuff. Due diligence as they went in. What do you need on this property? And they were trusted by those other management company groups. So they hired Steve Shandell a few years later, and I joined them. Actually, I'm starting my 4th year with them. So we are a consulting firm. We do due diligence for people looking to buy golf courses. We also do contract maintenance. We have 5 golf courses that we do the actual maintenance for. One thing that's kind of unique about our business is we are totally transparent. Some of the other maintenance companies, they charge a monthly fee, and the owner then doesn't know where that money is going. So we show what our fees are. We show the money we take out of it. It's a fee structure. It's almost like a management company, but we don't get into the golf business. We just stay on the golf course maintenance side. So
I always found it interesting that some of these management companies, I don't know how they always, they all work, but I was at one course and the superintendent was managing it, and it was a management company, and the same thing, they paid a fee, but they had no idea where that money went to. And it was like, it boggled my mind. Like, how do you know whether you're getting any value, or, it doesn't make sense to me. I mean, I guess, they do it and they manage it, but I just feel like I'd want more control over it.
Well, and I think that's where I think we're different, is that we do allow the owner. I mean, we work with the owner. In fact, we generally, once we're on property, we learn more about the property, so we generally save the ownership money and can improve the golf course. And then what we ask them to do is, hey, maybe take this money that we're saving you and put it in a fund for capital projects or future things down the road. 2 examples this year is in Pueblo del Sol, south of Tucson. An irrigation upgrade was done because we were able to have some money set aside in conjunction with the local water district. In Saddle Creek in Copperopolis, California, they were able to get a bunker project done because we'd saved about $80,000 over 4 years, and they were able to self-fund it. So they'd already, in their mind, they'd already spent the money because it had been budgeted for 4 years, but it was just in an account over here, so they were able to self-fund it and not really come out of pocket anything. So I think what we're really good at is really good at managing facilities, being able to get good turf conditions for the market segment they're in, and really drive value for the owner and value for the golfer.
Gotcha. So you have 5 courses that you are maintaining. How does that work with your staff? Do you guys does your company hire the superintendent and have them on the ground, or how does that work?
Yes, the employees become ours. The superintendent works for us, and sometimes we own the equipment, and sometimes the equipment's already there, so we don't take ownership of it. So and we're kind of flexible in how we build those deals. But yeah, at the end of the day, we are responsible for the course conditions.
And where are the courses located?
Copperopolis, California. One is in Pueblo del Sol in south of Tucson. We have one outside River Bend, outside of Chicago. We have Capital City Country Club in Tallahassee, Florida. Is that 5?
That's 4, but
4.
The point is they're all over the place. They're all over the country. So
Yeah.
how does that work from your standpoint? Like I don't know anything about the management company end of the business, but how does it work from your standpoint in terms of I would always think of a management company being local, that they could, buying power, pulling more resources together from one area and then managing courses, but you're all over the place in terms of geography. So how does that work?
Well, we still are able to pull buying power because we have deals with national vendors that supply locally. We also work with a company called BGM. It's kind of like a buying group, BGM Club. So we have worked with them for years and helped them out determining people to contact. But we also have our own deals. So, and a lot of the companies are bigger than regionals anymore. Companies like Harrell's, Ewing, Howard's, are just everywhere anymore, or in a lot of our marketplaces. So because we do have multiple courses, and because we're doing this consulting at over 50 golf courses, we create our buying power through stuff like that. We're also spread out all over the country. So I'm in the Carolinas, Dean is in Virginia, Steve is in Chicago, and Bill's in Phoenix. So we are able to get to our properties. We get to our properties once a month.
Oh, wow.
And we're in daily contact with the superintendents, so I think the real key is, it's like anything else, you got to hire good people. Yeah. So we hire good superintendents, and then we help them build the plan. We build good plans, and then we hold the superintendents accountable to the plan, and it works really good.
So you have the 5 properties, and you have superintendents there, and you visit those. But what about your consulting? So what do you do on that side of things? You said you have over 50 courses.
Yeah, anywhere from 2 to 4 visits a year, depending on what the client wants. A lot of times it's, operational reviews, working with the superintendent, making sure they're maximizing their resources, looking at their ag plans, looking at their challenges. What issues are they coming up with? So usually when we go in for a visit, they already have, the guys that are really organized have 4 or 5 things they want us to go look at, help them out with. Usually a first visit is kind of like a due diligence. We're trying to learn our way around the property, learn to meet the superintendent, figure out, what he knows, what he doesn't know, or where he's a little weak, and try to fill in some of those gaps and get the golf. At the end of the day, we're trying to make the golf course better for the owner and also for the golfer.
And those courses all around the country too?
Yep, everywhere.
Where's your region? All the way in the south?
I'm supposed to be the southeast guy. One of the other kind of cool things that we do is we provide what we call property coverage. And if a superintendent has left the position and there's an opening, we will go in and be the temporary superintendent. So like I'm in Lake Toxaway, North Carolina this week, and I was here last week. And I'll be here to the end of the week acting as the superintendent. So this year I've been in San Diego for 6 weeks, Denver for 2 weeks, Pagosa Springs near Durango for 2 weeks, and I'll be here for 2 weeks. And So I've spent about 14, no, it's at 6, 10, 12 weeks away from home being a superintendent on the ground again.
Oof. So you get
which is kind of fun.
You get to play with it a little bit, then you don't have to take it home for that long.
That's right. When I was in Capital City for a week too, our superintendent, we've been, as you know, having trouble finding an assistant, and he needed some time off. He'd been grinding pretty hard down there, so I filled in for him for a week too. So, nice. But it's kind of fun to get back on the ground again too, and just deal with daily operations again. I think it helps keep us fresh and tied closer to operations. At the end of the day, for most facilities that aren't high-end private clubs, being operationally sound is important for future sustainability. I mean, we got to, it's not just the environmental piece; it's the business piece. And, golf courses. I feel like we're in a similar time to when I got into business in the '70s and early '80s. Budgets weren't exorbitant. I go back to the Philadelphia area. When I went to Kennett Square, my budget there was probably very close to what Marion's was. It was one of the top 5 budgets in the marketplace. But that, the haves and the have-nots have separated by quite a bit.
Right.
And part of that's been the overbuilding of golf and the recession and all of those challenges. So what we really try to do is help each individual course be more sustainable, get a better product, and hopefully that translates to either more rounds or more dollars.
So that's a good transition into, and I had a question, but I'm going to actually save it to the end because it's a good transition, okay. Like where we are in the industry. So you've been around, you said, for 40 years experience in the industry, and you hinted at it in terms of maybe budgets were similar to where they were when you were starting to get into it. Where are we heading? You see it from a different angle, and you're constantly being brought on for consulting, but maybe to manage some properties as well. Where are we heading? I see it from an academics perspective and student perspective, but I don't always see it from your side of the fence. So,
but I think, golf used to be a game, and now it's a business. And I think because we've overbuilt and because the play is declining, I think there's a handful of things that part of this view comes from my time when GCSAA on the board, and we did a 2020 focus my first year on the board and looking at the future of golf. And I think there's a couple things. One, I don't think we sell the benefits of golf enough. I think we focus too much on the negatives. But we are overbuilt. Rounds are down. Dollar per rounds are down. And we haven't made a lot of progress on that. So golf courses have had to have budgets cut, and I think that's where it's been tough to keep courses at the level they were through the 90s and early 2000s, because if you were $1 million budget golf course and now you're spending $650,000, that's a big difference. So there was a big time in there where pre-emerges weren't applied, they were too expensive, so weeds are an issue, especially South Florida with tropical signal grass. As you move up through the Carolinas, we see issues with more goosegrass just because of the sulfon ureas are not doing the job that they originally did. So we're having to go old school a little bit. It's just there's different challenges in all the different markets, but at the end of the day, the clubs that are really succeeding are the ones that have invested in keeping the golf course where it needs to be to meet the market demand and meet the golfers what they want.
That's
at a price point that they want.
Yeah, that's what my question is. What do you see as the expectations from the golfers? I mean, what do they want? Is it just course conditioning? Like, what is it that makes a golf course successful? I don't know what the answer is, but I'm curious your thoughts.
Well, 2 times GCSAA, when I was on the board, did a survey with Golf Digest. So the number one thing golfers look for is condition of greens and bunkers. Number 2 thing they look for is condition of tees and fairways. What do you think number 3 is?
Pace of play.
Try again.
I don't know.
It's not the architect. It's not the price. Number 3 is who they play with.
And we control that?
No, but who they play with is a huge control. Because the curious part is because I travel so much and I've worked in different places, and I actually travel with a little golf group from our church on occasion. We go to where the crowd wants to go. So like if I want to go to say I call up Bob Farron and say, hey Bob, I got a group of guys, can we play Pioneers number 2? Well, Bob could work that out, but it would be more expensive than probably half the group could afford. So we go to lesser golf courses and spend less money because that's where everybody wants to go. At the same time, when I was at the PGA Golf Club, there was a founding member there, and he was very dissatisfied with how things had gone over the years. And finally, we were out top dressing greens one day, and he had never seen that done. And he came up to me and he goes, man, this is great. He had a putter and he ball and he was putting on the greens. And I said, why'd you stay? All my buddies are here. So as you watch the business, golfers tend to go where their buddies are. So conditioning, we probably are more emphatic about what conditions are at times than the golfers. Now at the high end, it's all about green and good conditions, and golf is more of a sport as opposed to a business. But they're affording to do that, and because they have the manpower, the money, and the budgets, they are able to do things detail-wise, water-wise management, hand watering, like areas on fairways that, and in my world, those areas would probably be brown areas, or we'd be trying to figure out how to do something different other than hand watering fairways. So I think that's the difference, is we just got to figure out there are some companies that are really good at measuring what their clients are saying. I mean, email, social media, surveying. So the customers will tell you anymore what what they want. So like we visited a golf course in the east coast of Florida with one of the management companies, and they have all this market information and comments. And the golf course has been improving. We've gotten rid of a bunch of weeds. We've gotten the greens better. We have turf cover everywhere. We're working on shade issues. Nematodes are still an issue down there. But the number one issue is bunkers. Well, now they're going to go do a bunker renovation because that's what the customer's telling them to do. So I think each golf course has to get better at knowing who their market is and hearing their feedback and then trying to meet that need. Because part of the challenge with golf is, one, we're 16,000 small business units. So we're 16,000 basically individual, processes. Golf has never been a very sophisticated business. That's why management companies have become more popular, because they are more sophisticated. They have processes and systems. But I also think at the end of the day, we are not selling the values of the game very well. All I ever hear is it takes too much time, costs too much money. Well, if you go to a Penn State football game on a Saturday, what's it cost and how long does it take you?
Depends how many beers.
If you go to a Pittsburgh Steelers game, how much does it cost and how long does it take you?
Yeah.
I grew up, as I coach my kids in all their sports. From the time I left my house till I was done coaching the game, it was 3.5, 4 hours. So I got there early, got the kids organized, got them warmed up. We played the game, had hot dogs after, got them all back with their parents and home. And I got home, it was 3.5 to 4 hours. So I think we just haven't sold the value of golf as a multi-generational game. Grandpa can play with grandson. Grandpa can play with son and wife. In fact, one quick story was when I was with Signature Golf, my oldest son was home from Las Vegas. He wanted to play golf with my youngest son. So I got him hooked up to play. And I said to my wife, and she was like, oh, I wish Michael wasn't playing golf because I want to spend another day with him. I said, why don't you go play golf with him? Spend time with both of your sons. Oh, they don't want me. So I go talk to the boys, and I said, hey, would you care if your mom played golf with you? That'd be great. So here was an opportunity for my wife to spend 4 hours with her sons playing golf and being able to talk, not like at some other venues where you maybe couldn't do that because of noise and all that stuff. So we don't sell that anymore. We don't sell how business used to be conducted, and that's still conducted on golf courses. Our current president loves to play golf. May not agree with everything else he does, but he gets slammed for playing golf. In fact, I've even sent 2 emails to Glenn Beck because he's a supporter of small business. Well, here's 16,000 small businesses that he puts down constantly.
Right.
So, I mean, we have political fights we have to overcome. We have environmental issues. But at the end of the day, golf will survive. And I think it'll survive in most of its current form. How we drive people to it and can get people engaged in it, I think, is our challenge. But we're focusing too much on the negatives and not selling the positives.
From the standpoint, I mean, I think expectations are crazy. Like everybody, especially, what happens in April when Augusta comes on TV and everybody wants that kind of, how come we can't be like that? And I was talking about it to some people recently, maybe on one of the last episodes. And there's got to be a law of diminishing returns. In other words, there's got to be some base level that can get you to some level on the golf course. And then, to get the extra $100,000, it's going to get you very little than what the first 100,000 got you, or maybe it's 500,000 or whatever it is budget wise. So you're manage 5 golf courses. What can you get? What's the base? What's the base that you need to get some level of expectations? And then how much is just too much above that, to get to hand watering fairways and going, over the top there? I know.
I'm
trying to get an idea of.
If I'm going to throw a number at it, it's going to be around $500,000 for southern courses.
Base.
Maybe a little bit less for northern courses. But it's all. That's all so individual too. It's all about, as we go into courses, what we tend to find is infrastructure struggling. The irrigation systems are aging, hasn't been managed well, hasn't been maintained. Equipment's getting older, or we're with owners that have just taken over and maybe thought they got a deal because they got a golf course for under $1 million, but now they're looking at maybe the irrigation system needs upgraded for $2 million. Maybe you need new equipment and that's $500,000. So it's the capital expenses a lot of times that are driving more of the expense than the operational side of it. The owners of those kind of golf courses, they're not expecting Marion. They're not expecting Baltusrol. They're not expecting that perfection, but they do want to have really good greens. They don't want 14 feet on the stem meter because they want people to play and have fun. So it's more like 9 feet on the stem meter, which you can still grow healthy grass and do that. It's kind of about finding the balance and all that. What does having the grass on the tees versus weeds on the tees? Those are still pretty easy fix, cost-effective fixes. What's the triplex mower or walk mower? Can you get away with triplex mowing? And with mowers today, 1985, if my year's right, I maintained a PGA Tour event with triplex mowers at Las Vegas Country Club. Had Ben Crenshaw come up and tell me they were the best greens he ever putted on. And had just been at the Masters 2 weeks prior. Ryegrass overseeded on 328. In fact, if you call Davis Love and ask him about the Las Vegas Invitational where the wind blew 60 miles an hour, he'll tell you how good those greens were. So that's the other thing is greens are still the most important piece of the property. If people have a good experience on the greens and the ball and there's grass on them, people will tend to walk away happier than if there isn't, especially below the level of the upper ends of the golf courses. Then I would say that's mostly public golf courses.
So we had briefly talked prior to going live about numbers of students entering the industry, and you mentioned here about trying to find somebody, an assistant. I assume you do headhunting because you're going into these properties, so you try to fill those positions with people How do we change that? How do we get our how do you fill those positions, or what advice do you give people to that may be interested in? I don't know. I'm just trying to think about. I don't have a solution for that answer either. But how do you get people interested in, or how do you on your end find people?
Well, I think there's a couple things that have occurred. And when I was president of GCSA, I gave a talk to the assistants in the Chicago area, and they were asking me, "Hey, these guys are staying longer at jobs. There's no movement in the area," and that was, probably 07, 08. That was 08, right at the peak of the crash. So yeah, then GCSA, the surveys are showing we're staying longer at facilities. There's no new construction, so superintendents aren't moving. I grew up in a time where I moved every 2 to 3 years. One, because it was a better opportunity. It was a career challenge that I wanted to go to. But I was also, my wife was willing to go. And I was the primary wage earner. What I learned in that visit with the Chicago guys, and as I talked to assistants, assistants are staying in jobs 6, 8, 10 years. I went from a year and a half as an assistant to being a superintendent. That doesn't happen anymore because superintendents aren't moving. So it is a challenge, and two-income earners. Sometimes the assistants, the wife is making the money or bigger money, and they don't want to leave. So like the guys that live in Chicago, that said, well, you got to be willing to move. Well, I can't move because my wife's making this, and unless she has this job or, my family's here. I mean, as a superintendent, I moved everywhere. Yeah. In fact, when I talked to them, the time the business was overseas.
That's going to make you more valuable to have flexibility in moving for sure. I mean, maybe not more, but more likely to move.
So it's hard to get guys out of the regions, and when there's like I think on the Carolinas website, there might be right now 8 or 9 assistance positions open, and some of them have been open. Have been on there for 2 or 3 months. The GCSA website, assistance positions, tons of them. TurfNet, tons of them. So it's just, I think the biggest factor is nobody's willing to move, or the cost to move are too expensive. The job they get to move to, they're going to either go backwards, or housing expenses are going to be too high, stuff like that. But I think you have to, Matt Schaefer, we were superintendents together in central Pennsylvania. He was at near Hollidaysburg, and I was in Williamsport. He made a decision back then to be an assistant, go back to and work for Paul at Augusta.
Right.
Good move for him at the time. If you really want to advance in this profession, and you want to get to that superintendent's job and have a progressive career, as I call it, then maybe you gotta make those changes and make those choices. But it's hard. I mean, we're living in a tough economy.
Isn't that what every business is about, though? Like, I always like these young people say to me, like, oh, and Matt, he's a good example of taking a huge pay cut to leave and go, from a superintendent's position to being an assistant at Augusta, because he knew that would get him the resume built,
right.
To a higher level than he was kind of, at. I don't know where I was going with it, but it's just like I try and say to the young people, I'm like, everybody has to make those choices and those changes, and it's not just a turf industry thing. There are clearly tougher times in getting superintendent's positions for them than maybe some other industries and moving up. But, I didn't get to choose where I went to my first job. I mean, that was the only job open in the country. You either took that job and moved, or you didn't. And fortunate for me, I was able to do that, and then, ultimately end up here at Penn State. But, I don't know. I think everybody just gets so down on it. Like, there's no jobs, and it's so hard, and I have to work too much, and blah, 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 blah. But I'm like, that's what every industry is about. Everything, every industry has to, there's sacrifices and stuff. Maybe.
I agree with that. I think if you think you're going to be successful any business in a 40-hour work week, you're not. I mean, you're not going to be that person that's going to make the better wages, have more responsibility, and that's what superintendents are. I mean, we are upper-level management in each facility. And if you want that responsibility, then you've got to be willing to put in the time and do what it takes to get the job done. I mean, when I worked in the Philadelphia area and in Williamsport in the Northeast, I mean, when you opened up the golf course till you closed it, it was 7 days a week. And you kind of had some easier times in the winter, and in the South, I mean, it's 12 months a year. You just got to get after it, keep going, and you got to manage your time. And you got to get better at, delegating responsibilities. But at the end of the day, if you want to advance, you probably are going to have to move. I mean, you just can't stay in one location. I mean, I didn't think you could do. I mean, I grew up in Reedsville. Jay Klein had just taken a job at Lewistown Country Club. Ron Horner was a young guy at Center Hills. Lou Morgan had just moved up to Toftra. I mean, there was no jobs available in Central Pennsylvania for Dave. And guess what? None of those guys had assistants back then.
Right.
So I had to go someplace where I could at least maybe get an assistant's job, and that was going to Philadelphia. So, the world's changed, and we have more assistants. We have spray techs. There is more of a path through those positions to get to the upper facilities, or to superintendent's jobs. But I think the biggest thing is there's fewer opportunities for superintendent's jobs, and nobody's willing to move to take the assistant's jobs. They get into different markets and get a bigger resume and a better resume.
Yeah, and I think moving is a big part of it. Obviously, flexibility in geography is big, and being able to pick your family up and moving. But I think there's some other factors that play into it here. And I guess my curiosity is, how is the industry going to change to meet the expectations of the young people who don't want to work 21 straight days, and they want weekends off sometimes, and they don't. And I know it sounds funny because it's a tough business and it's a tough industry. But if you get to the point where you cannot find an assistant, a second assistant, people to help you because nobody wants to work for you and bust their ass for that many hours, how do you see the industry ultimately trying to, like, are they going to be able to adjust to say, okay, we're going to figure out a way to get these guys every other weekend off, or we won't work them for $47,500 and work them 100 hours, a week, because now they're on salary and they're making a lot of money, but they're not eligible for overtime pay because they're making just that much. Like, how's the industry going to adapt to that? Like, what's the, not what's the solution, but what are the possible options?
Well, I think, this is where we have to figure out technology. There's X amount of, facilities like that we visit, there's X amount of dollars. And somebody's going to get paid, and what are the important positions? I think people aren't, I think superintendents tend to work too many hours. They can't find that balance. They don't realize that there is tomorrow sometimes. So I see that in a lot of guys, that they just maybe aren't as efficient or don't delegate or train people. I mean, it was funny, 3 weeks ago in Pagosa, I had to jump on a sprayer. Well, I can't tell you the last time I was on a sprayer, because I always taught people to spray so that I could be doing other things. But it's a training thing. It's we got to get better at delegation, and I think technology. I mean, if minimum wages go to $15 an hour and minimum salaries go to $47.5, this is the door that we've been. When did robotics become affordable? I mean, John Deere, I've had a great relationship with them over the years, but in 1994, they were mowing airports with fairway mowers. They were, in 1994, Feedback had a sprayer that you could put canisters on, insecticide in one, fungicide in another, herbicide in another, and you had a GPS thing, and you sent the guy out, and he followed the arrow, and when they drove over a spot, the right chemical came out and went through the system. And we're not there yet because it's not affordable. But if golf has to pay labor $15 an hour to mow greens at $60, so 4 guys paying them $60 an hour, maybe that's where that robotic mower starts to fit. Yeah. Or if we can ever get the price point in the right places, technology hasn't been able to filter down to golf yet. Little disappointed at some of the pricing that I'm seeing on the new nematicides. I'm not sure that that's all EPA driven. I learned a few years ago that Chip Go Choice was survey driven, pricing of it. And so that something that's going to cost $1,600 to $2,500 an acre for treatments. And when golf courses, I drove around a golf course the other day that we used to consult with, and it put in a zoysia plot, and I wanted to look at it. I mean, the spotted spurge all over the fairways, the tees were declining. I mean, there's a place that needs probably 40 acres treated for nematodes, but they're never going to be able to do it because they can't afford that ticket. So the whole industry has to start looking at everything from a pricing, product, and some of that's with the chemical companies too. I mean, it's one of my little bandwagons I try to jump on, but it's the cost of materials is so high compared to ag. And I'm not sure that all those differences really need to be there. Chip Go Choice, fipronil. I mean, you buy an ag for a gallon of it, it's like $500. Same comparable amount for golf is $13,000. It doesn't work.
I know, but it's like they see that golf has money, or the perception is that golf has money, and so if you could just change the label and make it only available in golf and not amenity or not ag, then then you can charge more for it, which is too bad. But I don't know how to change that.
Well, I don't either, but we got to have that discussion somewhere, because several years ago, I mean, well, and it's still happening. There are golf courses that are probably using ag products, and to be honest, some of the manufacturers know it because their ag sales went up and their golf stuff went down.
Right.
But fortunately, nobody's reporting it. Nobody's trying to do. I mean, but golf is trying to survive, and when you don't have the money to pay 13 grand to treat X amount of acres, you can treat it for 500. Owners are going to say, "Go get that $500 product. Just don't get caught."
That's fine, and you can go to jail as the owner. I don't want to take that responsibility on, but
I mean, it's a conundrum that we're in.
Yeah,
and we've got to get to and to me, that's where technology is. Drones, the sensors. Can we use that technology to where it's cost effective? Some of the technology I don't know that is. I don't think it's ever going to be able to make decisions for us, but can help us make better decisions.
Yeah.
Can we get better? Can we get more like precision ag, where we're only putting stuff where we need it? Can we do through this technology find that we don't have to treat 25 acres of fairways? We only need to treat 7 acres of fairways, because this is where the disease always is, and that's because of the soil. And then can we figure out a way to change something in the management process, watering, some other amendments so that those spots are healthier, that we don't have to spray. So I think that's where technology maybe can help us.
Yeah, we had this discussion in one of the last or a couple times ago in the Hangout, and that was exactly my point. Like, you're not going to get the technology to be affordable until they make labor unaffordable. If they start bumping everything up, then all of a sudden you have a trade-off, and like now it doesn't look like it's that much to buy a robotic mower or pay for a loan service that ties into your GPS sprayers. And even the technology is not there. I mean, it's there, but it's not integrated enough. But it'll become more affordable, not because I think the costs are going to drop that much initially, but because labor is going to rise.
Our other costs are going to go up.
Yeah,
and they're already up. I mean, it's one of the things that we've talked about internally is where does technology help us? And a lot of times some of the technology is actually labor intensive. So if you're not at a higher end facility where you have a second assistant that can go take this technology and go use it and gather the data. So how can we get the data to be more easily collected and easier to use? Plus, where do robotics fit into this in the future?
Yeah.
I mean, if you could eliminate labor and have the brain trust, some things you're still going to have to edge a bunker. I mean, there's still things you're going to have to do, but if those labor dollars go from $500,000 a year or $280,000 a year to $100,000 or $150,000 on the labor side because you've used robotics, those are the kind of things. I mean, that's where Primo has helped a lot of places at reducing fairway mowing.
Yeah.
Just being able to mow 3 times a week, so that's less fuel, that's less this. In the South, skipping overseeding, less labor, less fuel, can get by with shorter staffs in the winter. So that's kind of the business that we try to help facilities figure out. Triplex mowing tees versus walk mowing tees. Mowing fairways half and half, shading them, shadowing them, whatever you want to call that, instead of striping them. Less wear and tear on the mower. Mowers are on the ground all the time. A little faster. So that's the kind of things that we're pretty good at helping owners figure out in the short term. But in the end, if you go from an $8 an hour guy to a $20 an hour guy in a matter of a couple of years, that money has to come from someplace. So greens fees either have to go up, some revenue has to grow to help support that.
Yeah. Well, I think it's been a good discussion, and we've been on about 45 minutes, so we're going to kind of wrap it up with final thoughts. But I have my final thought in my head, but I'm gonna let you go first. And if anything you got coming up or you want to mention, I know that you're on Twitter as it Putting Surface?
Yeah.
At Surface, so we have that for you. So maybe we'll people can follow up and ask you more questions and pick your brain about stuff there. I always find it interesting, the discussions that get started and go for weekends on Twitter around some of these issues. But I'm going to give word to you and see if you have any kind of final thoughts or want to promote anything.
Well, I appreciate you having me on, and wish Tom could have been here. Dr. Watschke, Dr. Deutsch, Dr. Waddington were all pretty cool guys to be around. I was one of the younger guys in the class. Well, I was the youngest guy in the class. Learned a lot, and I think a lot of the education I got and the thought processes I go through are direct influence from those guys. So, kudos to them. And I'm not as involved at Penn State as I'd like to be because of distance a lot of times, and I do get up to campus usually once a year in the summer when you're not around or no students are around. Because I go visit family in Reedsville, so I go over and buy a Penn State hat, one Penn State hat each year. But I think golf is just such a good game. It's a good sport. We just got to figure out how to grow the game. And like I said earlier, I think we're focused on the wrong things. I think we need to focus on the positives that are there.
Yeah. Well, the one thing that I took away from this, we talked technology and that, and we've talked about that before, but you mentioned kind of efficiency and productivity, and superintendents probably working more hours than they really need to. And I had this discussion with Sam Green when he was at Eagle Point before as well. And, he said he was missing his kids' games and, working all these crazy hours. And that's kind of why he got out and did something different. But I think, and it's probably not just superintendents, but I see it in my students, and I see it even in my grad students and everybody. They're not efficient at technology. Like, they're not efficient at using like Microsoft Word to write a report, or they're not efficient at getting their budget together in an Excel sheet that has calculations automatically built in, that they don't have to do that every time. Like, they can develop these systems and put them into place. And now there's technology coming out that can manage labor and track these things, and that's great. But I think if people spent some more time in the winter and at GCSA and GIS, becoming more proficient and efficient at some of their processes, that combined with delegating some of their tasks and not feeling like they have to do everything themselves, I think they could get away with not having to work as much as they do. Now, I know that there are time periods in the summer when it's hot and nasty out and you just got to be there. I get that. But I used to work in Connecticut. I used to work 80 to 90 hours a week and do everything myself. And as I got more efficient and started to realize like I could delegate this task because I don't need to be out there cleaning my pesticide bottles out, I can hire somebody to do that for, as I started to realize that, like, my whole efficiency and program built around me better. So it's hard to get over that. I mean, I wanted to do everything myself too, but I think that superintendents work too much. And I think that, there's a lot that would argue with me, but I think that the employees that are coming into the market that people want to hire are going to change that game. They're not going to work that at that level. And somebody would say, well, then I would never hire them. And I'm going to say, well, then you may not have any employees, which may make it tough for you to manage your course. And so there's got to be a happy median between that. Yep. Lazy guys that don't want to work at all when, it's like an accountant. You got busy times and slow times. Golf course, they have busy times and slow times. But you can't work them 90 hours a week just because you did it. And that's what you think needs to happen. There has to be some balance in there. So I like that efficiency and productivity aspect that you mentioned. And
I got three quick things I want to say.
Sure.
When I went to work at Seaview Country Club as my second job in golf, we mowed fairways with F10s, 7 gangs. I could go mow 36 holes in 8 hours and double shotguns of 144 players on each golf course. One, golfers were asked to move out of my way. Plus, I had a big old mower and I could get a lot done and be productive. We don't have that anymore. We've gone smaller, lighter, and lower heights of cut, but we've lost production. Two, you go to an interview, and over the years I've been in a lot of them. Are you a working superintendent? Yes, I am. How many hours you work? 50 to 60 hours a week, probably. I said, but at the end of the day, you're hiring me to make sure all the other guys are doing their jobs. If I'm out spraying, I don't know what those guys are doing. If I'm mowing fairways, I don't know what those guys are doing. I'm not managing that staff. I'm not teaching them, I'm not training them, I'm not coaching them, and I'm not following up on them. And over 150 acres, I can't watch them from my office or from the seat of a tractor. And number three, for the guys that think they have to be there all the time, when we were building Barefoot Resort, 72 holes simultaneously, we were the general contractors. I was president of the Carolinas, never missed a meeting. Was on the board of GCSAA, was a deacon in my church, coached my son's travel baseball team 12 months out of a year. I don't buy into the fact that you can't find the time. You got to teach people, you got to train people, you got to delegate, and you've got to make that decision internally that you got to teach people to do the job right, and then and follow up with them. But if you're on the sprayer, you can't do that.
Right.
You got to teach people. So we've got to get better. If you're spending 100 hours a week at your golf course, you need to figure out another way to get the job done. And that's hard. I mean, we do live in smaller crews, smaller staffs, but you still got to figure out a way to do it. Because in the 70s, we didn't have big staffs either. My first budget at Williamsport Country Club was $65,000 a year.
Oh, shit.
That was a long time ago.
What you can do with that now, like putting green, I think. Not even that.
But it's, you've got to have your right back. It's, Mr. Miyagi told Daniel's son, Daniel, you must find balance. And you could do. I mean, you just got to get to that place in your life that you got to figure out another way to do it, or you'll just get burned out.
Yeah. And I think that's what we're seeing with a lot of assistants that get out of the business. They're just getting burnt out because there is no light at the end of the tunnel from being an assistant to then finding a superintendent's job. And they're getting worked so hard that, they're getting burnt out. And again, that's part of the problem. I think superintendents are going to struggle to find staff to fill these positions if they don't move them up and through or figure out a way to get them on or don't give them some balance. I don't think being an assistant and a lifetime assistant is a bad job. If the salaries came up and they weren't working them 100 hours a week, it's not a bad job. I think people can get by with that. But anyway, it's a whole nother topic we could talk about. I'm going to wrap it up here, and thank you for coming. I appreciate you the time to be on the show. And we will, I don't know who our next guest is, but it's somebody soon. And it's on the website. Greatest Pride is Monday. It's the first day of classes, and campus is busy, and it's just crazy out there. So anyway, with that, I'm going to sign off. But thanks again, Dave. I appreciate it, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, John. Tell Tom I said hey.
Will do.
All right. Take care.